stand. Is it over there? Oh,
Can we put it on the screen?
we're not prepared on the flag tonight. We can say the pledge, so if everybody could please stand and say the pledge.
Hold on, I'm pulling up an
We'll
image.
face towards the TV just so we're all in the same direction. There we go. Oh, face
Lots
towards
of flags. I don't
pledge
know.
allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, there we go. Do we have any considerations for the agenda? Any amendments?
We do not.
I'd like to make an amendment. I'd like to request that we move 4.1 up in the agenda.
So we'll do that prior to the nightlight.
And,
Did you?
sorry,
You're right.
9.1 and 9.5 will be combined into one report.
Okay. So, we're good up there with notes? Jody, you're good for this? Okay. Any other changes to the agenda? All those, I need a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I need a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of January 11th and the board workshop on January 30th.
I'll move.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That brings us to our first district presentation, and Mrs. Merck.
Hi, I'm Renee, and as you know, the coordinator of SEL and Family Engagement. And I'm here tonight to give you an update on the family engagement part of my position. So in September, I was charged with coming up with a structure for family engagement, which I did in named FACES, stands for Family and Caregiver Engagement Sessions. In October, I sent out a family and caregiver survey and started having conversations with community members and staff to determine topics of interest, the structure of the programming, the best time and length for the programming, and then began planning. Based on that feedback, I started off in November with Julie Hangst and Valerie Webb of Bridges. They presented a program called In Clean Sight on November 1st from 6 to 7 right here in the LGI. It was an interactive presentation exploring a mock teenage bedroom to better understand teen substance trends and signs, e-cigarettes and vaping, how to talk to teens about substance abuse and prevention, and some resources. In December, we are just inherently full of family engagement at HCS with our fabulous music department and our concerts and the beginning of winter sports. So I held off for another event until January when Sergeant Christina Fiola and Chris Rogers presented Internet Safety on January 23rd in the LGI. And in conjunction with that program, we're excited to have on February 14th, grades 6, 7, and 8, they'll have separate grade level presentations on internet safety in the auditorium from Sergeant Fiola. Ms. Torrey and I have been collaborating to make that happen. Ms. Thomas is also arranging a schedule with Sergeant Fiola to do presentations in the elementary on anti-bullying. And the elementary teachers will have already taught the second step unit on anti-bullying. So Sergeant Fiola's presentation will enhance the learning that's going on in the classrooms. But here we are in February, and Julie Hangst again of Bridges is providing active parenting classes. There are 6 sessions that started at the end of January and continue February 5th, 7th, 12th, and 13th. They're from 6 to 8 in the SEL room. The participants are parents of 5 to 12-year-olds, and it's an opportunity to learn new parenting skills, and the topics include cooperation and communication, responsibility and discipline, building courage and self-esteem, understanding and redirecting misbehavior, and active parenting for school success. We have 8 families signed up for that program. In March, I invited Marla Velke-Rieger, who's a licensed independent clinical social worker from Cazenovia. She's coming on Tuesday, March 12th from 6 to 7 in the LGI, and she will cover healthy relationships. The topics will include empathy, boundaries, connection, communication, how to ask questions after listening, and just guiding our kids toward having healthy relationships with their peers. In April, we have Elena Main, who's our HCS social worker through Madison County Mental Health, and she'll be talking about anxiety in adolescents. So she'll do a general overview of anxiety and then share tips and tricks on managing anxiety. In May, we already have on the calendar the Science and Technology Fair, and that is on May 22nd. So we're adding Celebrating World Culture to that evening. And right now, I'm collaborating with Ms. Thomas and with the elementary steering team on ideas. And we're hoping to have middle school and high school students lead some stations and highlight different cultures through crafts and song, dance, and activities. And then finally in June, fitness instructor and nutritionist and HCS parent Stephanie Morgan will be coming to discuss healthy habits, and she'll cover nutrition and exercise as we head into the summer season. So I'm really looking forward to involving and connecting HCS parents through the FACES events and hoping for a good turnout for the rest of the school year. But thank you to the board for supporting the programs, and to the presenters, but especially to Bridges and Julie Hanks, who's been a great partner through all of this. Appreciate it.
Any questions? Thank you for the
Thank you
wonderful
so
program.
much.
Thank you, Renee.
Good evening.
Have a good evening. That brings us to the nightlight.
So unfortunately, neither of these staff members could be here tonight, but I wanted to publicly recognize both Sydney Went, our school nurse, and Elena Main, our social worker, for the work they did with the Giving Tree. They took on this initiative to support our kiddos and our families during the holiday time. So they went out and solicited donations. They went shopping, they bought gifts. They worked with a local church to provide opportunities for our kiddos for the holiday Giving Tree. And through their efforts, they were able to provide gifts and items to 50 kids, in addition to collecting $2,000 in donations to purchase additional gifts. So I thought it was really important to recognize both Sydney and Elena for their work for the Giving Tree and providing for our students. So we will present them with a nightlight.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Our next topic is district presentation by Ms. Thomas, Science of Reading.
And that remote works. You have to touch it to start it.
Touch the screen.
All this fancy technology.
All right.
Now hit present. Upper right, upright. No, this the big
Present.
button. Share. Where is the slideshow right there? Slideshow.
Very good.
That's it.
Okay. So I'm not going to read through the entire presentation, but I really was looking forward to attending this event that happened in early January. As you all know, literacy is near and dear to my heart, and so I wanted to kind of share with you a little bit about what the State Education Department is saying about literacy at this point in time. So one of the things is I think January 10th, this initiative was kicked off statewide, and it was actually the 5 big school districts, Syracuse, Buffalo, so on and so forth. They all met together, and then the BOCES regions met together at the same time. And we had an interactive component in the local room, as well as that it was a webinar through the state education department. So there'd be a presenter, and then we were able to talk in our local groups about some of the information. So both components were really interesting. It was happening across the state all at the same time. So I thought that was kind of an interesting event. I can't remember one that had that type of format before. So that is, so I went with our regional BOCES partnership. I had the benefit of sitting with some folks from the adult education department. So this is actually, you can see up here, it's a P20 initiative. So it's not, I know we think of literacy and we think elementary, but there was a whole focus, all the way up from pre-K, all the way up to adult education. So what they did is, it was released, kickoff that day. They released 7 science of reading literacy briefs. These were developed by Dr. Lasso and Katie Carr, and they were our presenters as well. So they would explain some of the briefs and the work that they did, and then we would talk about it in our groups at the regional level. So they released these 7 different briefs. The first one was just kind of explaining what science of reading is. So a lot of people have used that phrase, and so I was super excited to see what does state education department and how do they define science of reading. So then I'm going to share with you some of the myths because I thought that was really interesting. They talked a little bit about the role of writing, and then you can see they did a separate brief for the pre-K years, which I thought was really important, elementary, secondary, and then also it talked a little bit about, there's a very brief on leading for literacy. So one of the neat things that I didn't know was going to be included in this science of reading is over here in this corner. You can see how they've also incorporated the culturally responsive sustaining education framework, and that's the work that we've been doing this year with Becky Kopp from our local BOCES. So within all of the briefs, they took that work and they combined it with literacy education. So that was kind of interesting, and that was something new I didn't realize they were going to do. So one of the key ideas here, and like I said, I'm not going to read all of these, but they're actually now out on the state ed website. I think they just might have released them recently, so you can find this information online. So they really clarified that the science of reading refers to a body of research and is 50 plus years of research. So that's what the science of reading is. It's not a specific curriculum. It's not just teaching phonics. It's not just certain pieces. They really kept it, and it says right down here at the bottom, the science of reading is not a single approach. It refers to a large, diverse body of evidence that should be used to inform curriculum and pedagogy. So that, and then, as I had mentioned, this key idea was just that it starts in early childhood all the way through adolescence. And you'll see here, it'll say pre-K 12 throughout a lot of the next few slides. So the other piece I was interested in is the science of reading emphasizes the importance of structured literacy instruction that develops the big 6 skills and competencies. So when we've been working together as an HCS team to take a look at what we feel are the important components of literacy, and we identified 5, which has been pretty consistent throughout those 50 years of literacy research. So the one that they added in that we hadn't necessarily identified was oral language. So that was interesting too. So that'll be something that we certainly incorporate into our work here, but obviously State Education Department wants us to be really thinking about that. So the 3 main principles: systematic and cumulative, explicit and direct. Instruction is clear. Students are not expected to make assumptions. Responsive and authentic. So those are, you'll see those woven into all of those 7 briefs that I showed you. So here's our big 6. So I was really curious to see how are they going to, what are they going to name these different key skills. And so oral language is the one that we hadn't necessarily put in, although we do incorporate that. Speaking and listening has always been something that's part of our standards, but they named that. Phonological awareness, an awareness of speech sounds, whereas phonemic awareness is the ability to identify and manipulate sounds. here in that. And then the curriculum audit tool is something that we're going to be working on next too. So, and that, wrap that up. So, any questions specifically about it? I know I kind of just wanted to give an overview of what it's going to look like, or.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
thank you.
spending your time on that.
I'm sure how to get that off.
No questions?
No questions.
All right. Then that brings us to our consent agenda. Consent agenda is, sorry, I heard a noise. Consent agenda is 5.1 through 6.1. If I could have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move. I'll second.
All those in favor of any discussion on the treasurer's report, consideration of claims, transportation report, cafeteria report, old business of policies and regulations? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That does bring us to our first community participation. I don't see anybody online with any comments yet, but if you are online and would like to make a comment, please do so in the chat and we will get to you. The board at this time invites the public to the podium, requests that the community participation be for agenda items only. Seeing nobody move, we will move on. Again, there will be more time later. We are on to personnel and new business. I need a motion to approve Jay Heffernan, John Hayden, Trudy Ferner, and Stacy Hawkinson to the substitute list as recommended by the administrative team and superintendent.
Move.
Second.
Discussion would be an executive session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
A motion to approve the following spring coaches for the 2023-2024 school year, contingent upon significant participants, and recommended by the athletic director and superintendent.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in, do we have ideas on numbers? Are we looking okay?
February 11th is when family annual, and then we'll be able to get numbers, but we are.
With
From
you
what we
feel,
know.
yeah, okay, that's just a good start. Good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain because I didn't know what we're voting on,
True.
if that matters to you.
Corey abstains because he just walked in
I
for
don't
that
know-
one.
I don't know what we're talking about.
So we were okay. Welcome, by the way. I need a motion to accept the following monetary donations with sincere appreciation and increase the budget of these amounts as recommended by the business manager and superintendent.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Any discussion other than
Thank
thank you
you.
to the First Baptist Church Deacons Fund and Hamilton Rotary Club?
Yeah, thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I need a motion to approve the recommendation of committees on special education and preschool special education.
Move. I'll second.
Discussion would be an executive session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. School calendar. I need a motion to adopt the 2024-2025 school calendar as recommended by the superintendent.
Move.
Second.
Discussion. Go ahead.
So this is a calendar that mirrors the BOCES calendar. First day of school would be September 5th. The last day of school, regular classes for 7th through 12th grade students would be June 16th. The last day of school for pre-K through 6 students would be June 27th. So it's a long calendar. It allows for 2 weeks at the holiday break. The lunar, Asian lunar holiday is included into this calendar. It's 180 days of instruction and 184 staff days, which means next year's calendar would have 4 emergency closing days built into it. This year we have 5, next year we have 4. So
So, and
All of
because,
our contractual days are built into this. So this would be the academic calendar for next year.
so because of the break, and instead of having the kids come back on a Thursday, we would just give them that full
Correct.
additional week?
Yes.
So November, Thanksgiving, December, January, those 2 weeks. We still get February for the full week. We
Mhm.
still get April for the whole week.
Mhm.
Okay. Labor Day's on the 2nd.
Long calendar.
Questions? Concerns?
Seems like a very long school year with those breaks.
It's a long school year.
Yeah.
You're gonna think that
Yeah.
until December, and then you get that 2 weeks off.
Yeah.
Yeah. The 2-week holiday break is nice.
Yeah.
Other questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Lost me here. Discussion only, so we've moved on to policies. I'll turn it over to the policy committee for 0021, 2031, 4210, 4220, 4511.
All these have very minor changes, formatting changes and things like that. They're in 2031, the district meeting and election, we're adding back some language, procedural language, but it doesn't change the way we operate. So,
Questions from anybody for their first reading? On any of them? No? Thank you guys for the work you're doing, as always. And that brings us to 9.1/9.5.
So I will start with some updates before Tinsay and I present a project we've been working on. So our cafeteria numbers continue to increase. Our breakfast average daily student meals served in October, we had 83, December 89, we're up to 102 in January. Lunch average daily student meals served, October was 229, December 268, in January we're up to 280. So our cafeteria numbers continue to increase, which is a wonderful thing that.
And the cafeteria is doing well with the workload.
Accommodating, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank
very
you to
well.
them.
Yes. I'd like to recognize Matt Crum, our school business official, for the good work he's doing managing our funds. The fiscal stress monitoring system was released by the state comptroller, and all of our designations have no designation, which means we have no significant stress on the district. So kudos to Matt, the job he does managing our district finances. So that's a wonderful report and a really good
Yeah.
kudos
Yeah.
for Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
How often is that done?
Yearly.
Yearly?
He's laughing like he was stressed.
What's that?
So he's laughing like he felt there was stress on the district.
Wait 10 minutes.
Right? The last thing I would like to talk about before Tinsay and I come up to the podium is we had a request from a community member who may experience a hardship with housing, considering the uncertainty with situations in town with some housing and the hardships that some of our families might incur with the potential loss of housing and what we could do to accommodate them. I've put together a proposal that I shared with you. I had a long conversation with our legal counsel. The recommendation is to follow our policy, which allows for a family who is displaced to continue enrollment at HCS for the remainder of the school year. After that school year is up, if they move out of the district, they would become non-residents. And we do not allow non-resident tuition. and it's very hard to distinguish and differentiate hardships. So the recommendation would be if a family is displaced mid-year, to allow them to continue at HCS, to allow some educational stability and family stability, even though they may be out of district. And then the following year, if they're still out of district, they would have to enroll in their district of residence. So I wanted to share that with you. That would be the recommendation of our legal counsel, and I would concur with that. So I will reach back out to the family that inquired and provide that information. There are a number of families that face hardships throughout the year, and the recommendation, we have a policy in place, and we should follow that policy.
And that policy does allow for some discretion on your part. So
It does.
We don't need to make any change to that policy.
We do
for
not.
this to work, right?
It allows for some discretion, which I think is applicable in these situations. Ready? So we have been discussing with our SSAC, our Superintendent Student Advisory Council.
I think that there's an
Oh,
Just press the flame button there,
the what?
the middle button. And now you see where the last one on the right, which says chromium. There you go. Yep. On the bottom, see the one, 2 arrows?
Okay, so last year's SSAC, the idea was brought up about a reporting system a confidential reporting system for bullying incidents, health and safety incidences, and we talked about how do we do that, and we looked at a number of third-party solutions. There were some barriers that we weren't comfortable with. We talked with the administrative team. I worked with Chris on putting this together, and I think we have a really good system that will provide opportunities for students, parents, community members to report. So I'll let Tinsay talk a little bit about the background to get us here, and then we'll walk you through what we've come up with.
Yeah, okay, so I think you covered most of it. So last year with SSAC, which is when it was established, one of the biggest things we talked about was reporting incidents and bullying, and the fact that it's not reported a lot, but it still happens. And also we talked about it in inclusivity committee, and like how do we get people to engage, and how do we get people to report stuff that's happened to them or someone they know. So then this year, Mr. Dowdland and I and Mr. Rogers and also Marjorie Jones have been working on making a Google form that is very easily available on the Hamilton website. It's literally, you can see it right now, it's about 2 steps away. You just click report bullying, which is the top quick link. And then you have a page here with some background, and the bullying incident and reporting form, which is the second thing right there. If you click that, it will take you to the Google form that we have worked on the last few weeks. And hopefully it is, it's open enough that it allows students to report things easily. One thing that I think is very unique about this form is that it allows you to report quietly, because you can do it in your own home, on your own time, without someone like looking over your shoulder. It does not allow you to do it anonymously though, for following up reasons and stuff like that. But the goal of this is that hopefully we get more incidents reported, because I think sometimes Mr. Arquette is a little too intimidating and no one wants to go to his office. So instead, maybe doing it quietly through this would be nice. And then also, another thing that they added that I really like is that for serious stuff, they have the see something, say something reporting, which is like, basically, it's kind of obvious, but if something's serious, call 911. Don't talk to the administration if it's gonna like harm you or harm someone else. Just go straight to the police. And this thing.
And this is the form.
there also a link on that bubble?
There is, so we'll go back there.
And
Very
it's
similar form.
much shorter though, but I guess so.
It does have an email address up there, so I don't think
Yes.
so.
And they added even more stuff in this, just this form too. There's also, like, the suicide hotline is linked, and other mental health, like third-party resources and phone numbers, hotlines are all linked. I mean, they're all right there. I didn't even know most of these existed, so pretty nice.
And then there's domestic violence, addiction, runaway, and then another suicide crisis, the 988 Lifeline chat. And then if you go back to our homepage, there's also the icon here. If you see something, say something, if you click on that, it takes you right back to that landing page. So very few clicks, very user-friendly.
Do I have to have a Gmail associated account to use it?
No.
Okay.
No, anybody can use it. So
Great.
thank you to Chris for his work behind the scenes, kind of making this platform user-friendly. Heather has shared this with her elementary steering team. Mark is sharing it with his steering team for feedback. We're taking it to the SSAC next week for their feedback, rolling it out. And then once we do that, Tinsay and Marjorie will roll it out to the students in form. And then we're going to work in the elementary on how to appropriately allow access for elementary students. So I think it's a really good form. I think it's easy. It's a quiet way to report, which is exactly what we were looking for.
Do we think that there's any barriers because there isn't an ability for it to be anonymous?
We talked a lot about that from the administrative level. It's very hard to investigate thoroughly anonymously. So it confidentially, I think it helps if you're able to do it quietly and confidentially from the
And when it's
quietness.
rolled out, that part will be stressed and...
Yeah, and the utmost confidence will be kept throughout the investigation, but to allow a thorough investigation anonymously, it's hard to do that when there's nowhere to go.
And you might want to put on the top of the form that statement too. There's
Yeah.
room to write more in that, underneath the title of it. Not on the see something, say something, but on the other one. Just put a little bit more like about confidentiality and such there.
Wasn't there a letter sent out to parents about this one?
Not yet,
Not yet.
no.
There will.
And that will be included in the letter.
Yeah, I think that's important,
Once it gets,
you know.
kind of vetted internally and externally by our different groups, then we'll send out a letter on Parent Square announcing it.
It's already live though.
It's not live.
It's not live?
No.
I left it so you could.
It's live right now, so we
As soon
could,
as you're finished talking, I'm gonna take it.
he's gonna
Okay.
take it down.
And that's going to the steering committee, is it going to the inclusivity committee?
It can go to the inclusivity
I think
committee.
that would be, yeah, a good idea.
Sure. Yeah. Any other questions?
So yeah, it says name and photo associated with your Google account, so like, my grandpa hears something in a Price Chopper, and he doesn't have email, he can click on a link on the homepage and still put in something that he expects to.
Yep.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about how any information that you get through these forms is disseminated after, I'm assuming Chris gets all of the forms, and then does he decide who
I actually have it set up
gets
so
what
that,
information?
so that as soon as somebody presses submit, myself and the building leaders get a notification that, hey, something's been submitted. So, we'll all get a notice, and then we can go and look at it and see who it applies to.
Okay, so everybody gets notified whenever there's a report, and then you figure it out. like who's
You
the-
get an email
Okay,
as soon as somebody hits submit.
okay.
We thought it was appropriate for all of us to get it because sometimes some of us are not here, we're out of town, on vacation, whatever.
For like weekends?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah. questions or comments?
I think it's great, great start, and hopefully the students have a good response to it. I mean, if nothing else, it's an avenue, and it's more of an avenue than we had 3 months ago, right? And so hopefully, if somebody needs it, they'll be willing to use it.
I mean, it's
So-
like right there, it's literally the top link.
Yeah.
Would this also be something that's advertised, I guess, in the newsletter that goes out to the community so that they know it's available?
Put it
also?
on every.
And recurringly, so that you kind of keep reminding people that it is there.
Great work.
Thank you.
That brings us to the administrative reports. Give everybody just a second. Do you have questions for any of the administrators based on their reports that they submitted? And thank you for the work in submitting them. Specific questions?
Thank you.
Thank you for all the work that's going on. Athletics update was part of the secondary report. And that means it is time for Matt to come on up. Business Managers Report. Here we go. Is that- Yeah.
Thank you. Before I get into this, the slide and the handout, just a quick comment. I appreciate the kind comments with regard to the fiscal stress monitoring score. First song in Amanda, it is an annual designation that we receive, and I kind of say this every year. It's kind of while it is it's nice to have a positive designation. It's strictly based on very specific data points, and I've always said that if there's concern with the district and there's instances of fiscal stress, you're going to hear it from Bill and I long before this designation comes out from the state. So while it's a good thing to not be on the other end of the list, it's not always the best indicator. So thank you, but really not something we rely on too much. So with that said, in terms of fiscal stress, looking ahead to budget development for 2024-25. I just want to preface things by saying it is still very early. It's very early in terms of where we are internally looking at things. It's still very early where we are with what the ultimate state budget that will be adopted is. We had budget coffees earlier this week. We had 2 of them. We did have people attend, 3 to 5 people at each of them. The feedback we got from the meetings was very positive. We talked about what's on this sheet here, and I think what we're going to do moving forward is aim to continue to have coffees in between board meetings and sort of leading up to the next regular scheduled board meeting. We'll see how this goes tonight, where we go in the next couple weeks, and then we'll probably try that again by having one maybe first week of March before the March board meeting, and then go from there. So a couple of you folks attended, and the feedback was pretty positive. So if you think back to January, when Bill and I spoke about the budget, it was prior to the state executive budget run was released. We had talked about over the holiday break running an initial budget. We kind of threw out a big bad number of $650,000 of a potential deficit and shortage of revenue. And I thought tonight, as we did at the budget coffees, to show you why we're where we are, and just sort of walk you through this based on what we know right now, based on the current scenarios that we know of, why we're where we are. And I want to draw your attention first to the two circles in the middle of the page, just for some perspective. Our current year tax levy is about $8.4 million, and that's the primary revenue source of our $15 million budget. So just for context, 1% on the tax levy is about $84,000. So when we talk in terms of increases to the tax levy or needing to increase the tax levy to generate enough revenue to cover a certain expense, 1% is the equivalent of around $84,000. By March 1st, we have to submit our allowable tax levy limit calculation for 24-25. It is looking right now, we're going to be right at around 4%. There's one more calculation we kind of have to hold in on with regard to the employee retirement system contribution. I think we're going to be able to exempt 0.1% of our anticipated payroll because the increase is 2.1%. So anything in excess of 2, you can exempt from that calculation. It's not going to be significant. So for the sake of this exercise, let's just assume right around 4%. So the amount of additional revenue that we would generate in 24-25 with that allowable tax levy increase is $333,000 roughly. So I want you to keep that in mind. We can talk a little bit about the state budget at the end. The outlook currently right there is not great either. So again, for the sake of this exercise and to get an understanding of where we're at, I want us to just assume that any additional expense, we would need to increase the tax levy to generate that revenue to cover those expenses, okay? So if we start in the top left corner, and we've been talking about this for years, we've known that it's been coming. At the end of this current school year will be the expiration of COVID relief funds that we've been receiving through the ARP and the ESSER funding programs. Fortunately for us, we really didn't utilize these funds really significantly until the 22-23 school year and the 23-24 school year this year. When those grants came out in 2021, you could expense certain things retroactively to March of 2020 when the pandemic began, stuff like PPE and transitioning to remote learning. Fortunately for us, we didn't have to do that. We were able to build a budget primarily with personnel. And I would say probably 85–80% of our total $1.1 million allocation was geared towards personnel, and the remaining towards some staff development and instructional materials like Chromebooks, that kind of stuff. So we're very fortunate. However, here's the tough part. Currently this year and last year, we have 7.5 FTEs, so full-time equivalents, 7.5 people that are being currently funded through those funds. One of them, I'm going to speak in very general terms, obviously, because we're talking about personnel. One of them, and the one that I can talk in most detail about now, is a paid service. It's technically not an FTE. It's the social worker that we're paying Madison County for. So in that, it's not 7.5 employees of HCS. Included in that number is the paid service to Madison County for social worker. The remaining breakdown of those 6.5, 3 of them are support staff, 2 of them are PPS department members, and the other 1.5 FTE are instructional positions. So if we were going to retain those positions and absorb the costs of those positions in the general fund budget for 24-25, at this point I estimate the cost of that to be about $460,000. That's inclusive of all their benefits. It's a little tough to pinpoint right now exactly because of those positions. There's different levels of benefits that we pay out for those people in terms of health insurance and whatnot, so retirement contributions. But again, drawing back to those circles for context, $460,000 equates to 5.5% of the tax levy. So in other words, again, sort of the negative spin on that is just to retain those positions currently being funded by COVID relief funds would exceed our allowable tax levy increase by roughly 1.5%. Does that make sense? I don't want to go too fast. Moving to the right.
Matt, really quick before we move
Sure.
to the right.
Yeah.
So with that paid service position, do we know, like from Madison County, are they going to continue to like supplement that position? Do we know that information yet? Or
As of right now, yes.
okay,
I believe that.
Yes.
Heard otherwise.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So moving to the right, if we look at, again, I'm using my terms, I'm trying to make it so everybody can kind of get at this. You know, our current general fund payroll, so roughly the other 110 or so FTEs in the building. So the rest of our employees that are currently budgeted as part of our $15 million budget, our current year payroll for those people is about $6.1 million. In anticipation of roughly a 4% increase in total payroll based on contractual obligations, that equates to about $247,000 or 2.95% of the tax levy. So those are our contractual wage increases across the board for the remaining employees of the district. Moving down, looking at those same employees and now also including retirees. So the budgeted general fund employee benefits, again, anticipating a 4% increase for all employee benefits. It's about $4.5 million budgeted in the current year. A 4% increase equates to $180,000, which is 2.15%. So, in other words, forget about the top left bubble for now, the top left box. The cost of personnel, existing personnel in the general fund, about 5.1%. So again, not as high over, but slightly over what our allowable levy increases. Now, under normal circumstances, and really what we've dealt with the last few years, is that's what we'd be looking at this point. And really, if you look at it, we're pretty close. We're allowable levy increase of 4%, cost of personnel, which is where most of the expenses in the budget, 5.1, we're pretty close. We offset that difference with some aid increases from the state budget. We have some savings through attrition. We look at how we do some things, we're pretty close. And that's really where we've been. And we've been able to just sort of roll things over and keep on moving. But again, the wild card this year is those COVID funded positions. So if you look at the little cloud, what I refer to as sort of the total personnel impact, equates to a 10.6% tax levy increase. So that is about 6.5% over our allowable, just for personnel. And then the last box over on the left, this is the tough part. That does not include any other cost increases. And this is where internally we are just starting to get the ball rolling and looking at how we do things and what things are going to cost. This does not include any changes in student need or programming or assessing student needs, which Kevin, Mark, Heather, Chris, all of us as a team, all of our faculty are in that process in the next couple months, looking at student needs and assessing programs. So it's not just as simple as, well, everybody that's here, come back next year, every kid that's here, it's a process, it's an annual process. So that doesn't include any changes. Those could be changes that affect the budget in several ways. It could affect it more expense, less expense, people moving around, we're not real sure. The other reality is just the increase in costs. I mean, everything costs more. Everything. All the services we get through BOCES cost more. It all really ties back to people. Maintenance contracts we have, service calls, fuel, utilities, everything's going up. So really that 6.5% impact over the tax levy of personnel, it's probably not not the full bill, if you will. So hopefully this is helpful to kind of paint the picture of where we're at. Again, if you omit that top left box, it kind of paints the picture of where we've been the last few years and what typical years look like. And honestly, the conversations right now probably wouldn't be this in-depth because we'd be pretty close. We'd have a pretty good feeling of where we're at, with the exception of things that are being reviewed. But at this point, with those COVID-funded positions, it's a different scenario this year. So certainly take any questions right now. Obviously, personnel-related questions, I will speak in generalities. Many of the team, we will, if there's any specific questions, we can address them.
Matt, can you just give a quick overview on the governor's proposal?
Sure.
Foundation aid?
Sure. So if you recall the January meeting, we were awaiting the executive proposal from the governor. It was very surprising what ultimately came out. For the last few years, there's been a firm commitment from the governor and ultimately the legislature as well to fully fund foundation aid based on the formula. And for those districts that were already fully funded, a hold harmless provision where they had a minimum increase from year to year. So we've been in that fully funded category for a number of years. And we've been fortunate enough, I think the last 3 years, we've had a 3% hold harmless increase. So I think most people expected something similar. At worst, maybe a freeze for those districts that were fully funded, with ultimately maybe some hold harmless increases down the road. That's pretty much what's happened in the last couple of years. Not so much. So the roughly, I think it's 40% of the districts that are fully funded. So in other words, they're getting more aid than what the formula says. The governor implemented as part of this budget a transition adjustment. That's what it's called. I'm going to call it a cut. Cutting your foundation aid by a factor based off of the amount that you're overfunded. So what that meant for us is a reduction in foundation aid of 1%, which is about $37,000. So current year, we're receiving about $3.7 million in foundation aid, and that's our, other than the tax levy, that's our next biggest primary source of revenue. Makes up the bulk of our budget, which was tough to swallow. After looking into things more closely, it pales in comparison to what some of the other districts in the state would be facing if this is carried out. There are some districts that are just devastated. And the districts that are fully funded, we think, generally one of two things. One, their enrollment has declined significantly, or they've become wealthier. Because those are two important factors in the formula. So we're not as bad as many others. Bill was in Albany last week. I don't know how many webinars we've listened to and how many blogs we've read from the different advocacy groups. The consensus right now seems to be don't panic. Both the Assembly and the Senators are both, they're saying they're going to fight like crazy for this. So it is an election year. There's a lot of underlying political factors involved in this. Ultimately what's going to happen. So again, we're being told not to panic. The tough part for us, though, is that I don't want to provide any sort of real false hope here. Again, as a district that's more dependent on our tax levy, even if there's a hold harmless, let's say of 3%, 3% is $110,000 or so. So not insignificant. Yes, it certainly helps, but it's not the kind of money that's going to make up some of the escalating costs that are displayed here. So again, very early. We probably won't hear anything from the state for at least 6 weeks. The chair of the education committee, Senator Mayer, said right now both chambers they're developing their one-house budgets, their rebuttals to the governor's proposal. That's going to take time, and then ultimately it's the 3 people in a room getting after it until. Now, one thing I will say, in recent years, the state has come through with on-time budgets, so that's April 1st. So, regardless of what happens with the state, though, we have this in front of us, and we're working on it. It's been a lot of hours, a lot of discussions, a lot of contentious cabinet meetings.
Well, I thank you for putting it in a format that's easy to
Sure.
easier
It's
to
helpful.
understand
I'll offer
than
feedback,
a lot
not
of.
right now, but take
Yeah.
it, digest it. And that's sort of the plan with the coffees and meetings, and we understand the need to be transparent through this, make sure people are informed, aware of changes that may be coming. So,
Thank you for that.
other questions?
Question?
Historically, what's like the range of this other expense? Is it like impossible to predict, or is it,
Yes.
yeah. Like tell
well-
me how wide is that range?
Typically, I would say the operating expense piece is usually 2 to 5%. That's not the hard one. The first bullet this year is the challenge.
Yeah.
I'm hesitating because I can't say a whole lot, and nor am I really prepared to say much, or it's really my place, I don't think, but the student needs and programs is the big piece, and that's the one that's hard to predict.
And it's not something we can base historically because it's so individual.
It is individual student based on individual student needs. And that's, through the process of evaluations and assessments, through Kevin's office, through Heather, Mark, Chris, through the team, and through our different teams within the building. So that's the tough one. And I will say, that's not unique to us by any means. I know our team, they go to regional meetings, I meet with business officials. Student needs are not going away. There's a wider range of needs, there's more students with needs. So it's a major challenge. So again, yeah, even if we didn't have the COVID relief funds, might that number be significant enough this year that it wouldn't be as easy as usual? It might be, it might be the scenario, if that makes sense. But, so I'm sorry, I can't really.
No, that's all right. That's what I want to know is like how.
Yeah, and
Does that make sense?
I mean, Kevin can talk more about the process, but by the middle of April, when we are presenting a budget to you for adoption, that will be more known, because between now and then, this process will have time to run its course, and we will know more as far as what's needed. Is that fair?
Tell me if you don't want to answer this question. Is there a world where a tax cap compliant budget is realistic?
Attainable? Always.
And
Yeah.
we-
How to get there, I don't know at this point. Yeah, I mean.
Is that the number one priority?
No,
Okay.
nope. But it's always the number one, baseline for where we start. So we will always, at least unless I'm told otherwise from the get-go, that we will always try to attain that initially. This year, and again, I'm getting off on a little bit of a tangent, but I think this year especially, it's something that I feel we need to look at least initially. We have a vulnerable tax base right now. There are a lot of unknowns with some certain things within our tax base. As a school district, and Jen and Bill and I had an exchange about this with regard to the tax cap. We're at a disadvantage as a school district. We go last. The county and the town, they have calendar year, fiscal years. So they've already adopted their 2024 budgets and tax levies. The village, I believe, is a month ahead of us, month or 2 months, so they're either June 1, so May 31st, or May 1st, either one, they're a little bit ahead of us. So we're the last taxing jurisdiction, if you will, that goes, and we're the only one that has a vote. So, yeah, there's that question, is where's that breaking point? So we're cognizant of that. So I would say tax cap compliant is not the number one priority, but it's always the number one sort of baseline starting point, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks.
yeah, you're welcome, thank you.
We're gonna skip SEL report.
Pardon me?
Skip SEL report.
Yes.
Okay. We are going to skip over the SEL report this evening, as Ms. Mark had to leave unexpectedly. So we will move to knowledge sharing. And from what I heard, secondary committee has not yet met.
No, we have to reschedule. We'll be reviewing some bullying forms that I know that now. So that's all you hear.
Okay, see, we set you up for that one. Elementary steering committee, you met?
Yep, we did. Everyone else said all the things that happened, so, with the exception of they now are providing National Honor Society volunteers to do childcare for members on the steering committee if they need childcare. So that's kind of nice. But other than that, it was they talked about the Science and Technology Night being combined with World Diversity Day. So that was pretty exciting. They talked about like having a passport for kids to be able to go and stamp at different booths, and then some of the feedback was that last year they really liked having kind of a list of all the different stations during the Science and Technology Night, so parents and students could kind of plan which things they wanted to attend, and I think they're going to do that again because that's kind of fun to like highlight the things you want to go to. So that should be exciting. Stuff that she's doing with bridges and the active parenting classes, and then we just briefly looked at the See Something, Say Something, and the forms. So yeah, meet next month.
Okay. Inclusivity, did you meet?
We did.
Okay,
We had a really good session. We started the root cause analysis based on the gallery walk that we did. Feels like a while ago. It's a couple months ago now. That was assisted by, again, Amy Combs from the Mohawk Regional Data Center. It was an exercise of just analyzing the data that we saw with some our own interpretations of each of the community members that are participating in that activity. And Amy Cohen's really just guiding us through in understanding some of that data and how to read it. Also from the counselors and Chris being there, also helping us just understand that data better as well. So thank you for that. That exercise will continue in the next meeting. It's a big haul, as Amy Combs sort of described. It's really the way she's done this before. It's done in three-hour chunks. So it's a big ask of the community, and people are stepping up to do that, which is great. Our end goal is, again, I've said this before, is to create the action plan for inclusivity by the end of the year. So we're on track to do that with Renee Merck and Bill helping out organize that. There is another portion of the meeting that I didn't, so the meeting started with a presentation from Ms. Kowalski and Lena Harnick on the mural that they're working on. So it's a process where they've included feedback from the school, the students, and taking a lot of considerations in creating the components of this mural. They're doing a fantastic job of representing not just kind of the makeup of the school, but also a backdrop that represents Hamilton as well. So that's a work in progress. It looks like it's moving in the right direction. So.
Anything else from those committees? Brings us to advocacy.
I have a lot, but I'll talk really fast. So I went to the School Board Institute Legislative Forum at Oneida BOCES on January 25th. There were many people in attendance with our legislators, our assemblymen. We, as board members, spoke on several topics, including foundation aid, tax cap, zero emission vehicles, tort reform, broadband capacity, fund balance, local control, negative votes using formula, and BOCES. I have notes from all of them. I was going to disseminate that all tonight, but it would take longer. I knew we already had a long meeting, so I'll just throw that information out in an email. Some of the responses on different topics from our legislators were very interesting. I spoke on our tax cap. It was not super well received. I think there were definitely people that felt the same way we do as Hamilton, but the response from the legislators were like, yeah, that is not on Albany's radar at all. Like, thanks for speaking, but it's really not going to go anywhere. So thanks for your time, but
I heard the same things in my time at all.
yeah, like they said it wasn't going anywhere. So not to get our hopes up on that. I just found out, so that lovely 8-hour school board NISBA resolutions committee, I just found out that I was appointed to be on a committee to review all of the resolutions and determine what will get put forward for that annual meeting. So that lovely 8-hour meeting has now turned into more time. But I didn't even know I was being nominated or appointed for it. So Bill Miller from District 5, I guess, appointed me to that position. So that could give us some leverage, though, to be able to really look at some of that stuff and determine what we want to move forward. So look at that as a great opportunity. And then last Friday, I attended the virtual Capitol Conference. It was all morning. It went really well until it didn't, and I started messaging Bill very furious, like, there was several different people. There was NICET on there. There were some representatives from the governor's office. There was the chair of the Senate Committee on Education. Our legislators are letting us know that they're not happy with the proposal that the governor presented, and they're really fighting for us in education. Everything went great until there were some representatives from the governor's office. I'm kind of going out on a limb saying this in public, but I'm going to say it. Basically, one of the messages that was presented is we asked for full funding, we have full funding, and now school boards and administration just need to do a better job at prioritizing. That's when steam started rolling. Hopefully with some of the lobbying and things like that that are taking place, the view on that will maybe change a little bit, but that's basically the message that we got from the governor's office, is it's time to prioritize, and we all just need to do a better job at doing that. And then this isn't totally advocacy, but I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention. We got an email, I think everyone did, from NISBA. They're offering some micro-learning courses now, talking about social media and DEI and effective school board meetings and things like that. So I just wanted to let everybody know, like, if you didn't get that, let me know. It's all online, and then I think we just messaged Jody, because she kind of controls our NISPA stuff, and I think she can register us for those. Am I right? Okay. So there's some good topics that could be like professional development stuff for us. So, and that's it.
Great. Questions?
Thanks for doing that.
Yes.
And all those meetings.
It's,
9.9 is board update, and last meeting we talked about needing to fill the BOCES representative from our district for the BOCES board, because I'm going to be stepping down from that position. We've, as a team, have reached out to around 25 to 30 people, asking them of interest, if they'd be willing, since this current board isn't able to fulfill the role at the time. So we're trying to, work our way through some of the community and various parts of the community to find some people to fill that spot. In our questions to the people we've asked were two pertinent questions of, would you be interested, and can we speak about you during the meeting? So anybody that didn't respond, or that responded in the negative, we won't obviously be speaking of those. Jody does have a list of who we reached out to. And, we can add to it if there's somebody that I missed on that. But generally speaking, I think we have a couple people that we can bring up and then talk about next steps. So maybe I want to kind of start with the next steps first, if that's okay. I was talking to Corey today just so we could catch up on a couple of different things, and we just kind of threw out, where are we going tonight on this, which was great, because my head had kind of been spinning on that too. Like, if we do have names to speak about tonight, what do we do from there, and such. So I think we can talk about the people that have said yes, if there are people that have. And then I would like to propose that a next step would be to invite those people to a meeting with, I can work at trying to get BOCES board representative there, other than me. Maybe Scott, the district superintendent, and Bill, and so that we can have a small meeting so that there's a better understanding, more questions could be answered, that type of thing, so that these people would have the ability to ask some good questions and understand what they're getting themselves into with a 3-year commitment. So I think that that's kind of what our focus should be on tonight, is the people that we've mentioned. Are we good with taking that next step to invite them to do that? From there, that might actually eliminate some people, right? Like, they might have a couple questions, they might not feel it, and maybe it won't, and then we'll have to go steps from there. But I think that would be an important step, and as Corey and I kind of spitfired it, it just kind of came out today, and we were like, yeah, actually, we thought it sounded really good. And so we just didn't know what you guys were thinking on that.
that sounds great to me. Good
I think
good
that sounds
brainstorming.
Yeah, that sounds good, to provide more information and give them a little better understanding of what they're getting into.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and
I have a list of questions. I don't know, I'll ask. So that'd be good for them to be able to ask questions.
yeah, and they
of
can,
you or whoever.
and that way
proposes.
they're getting it firsthand.
Yeah.
I think my translation of and my experience of the board is one thing. I've had a positive experience. I'm leaving for different reasons, but at the same time, being able to ask those poignant questions and getting the response and seeing and feeling that response, I think is important.
And also to let all of you ask questions too, or all of us to ask questions of those.
So, yeah, we could do it as a full board meeting, or we could just invite just those people.
Yeah, I think if it was just with Michelle and the BOCES reps, then we'd have to call like a public meeting
Right.
for the whole thing, so this would be more of a, just like
So we can
chance
kind of,
for them.
find a time with just that group of
Gotcha.
people.
Mhm.
Okay.
We can obviously invite all of us if we want to, but.
And maybe now, as I'm thinking about this, also that's a chance for us to ask Scott, what do you need on the board?
Mhm.
Like, what are the perspectives? What are the like types of ideas that
Right, and
the
he
board
can
probably
kind
could
of
benefit from?
ask some questions too, to kind of get a feeling of the people in the space as well. Not that he gets to select, obviously, but. So yes, so out of the however many I asked, I did have one person that I can speak to. I don't know about anybody else.
I have one person as well.
Just one.
Do you have the same person? What are you talking about?
So that'd be fine.
I think we divided the groups enough that they're probably different people, yeah.
So Amanda, do you want to talk about who
Sure.
and how that conversation went?
Yep, I had a conversation with Shelley Crouch, who is an HCS alum. So she went here, she graduated a few years before me. I just have some bullet points that she gave me. She had a lot of great questions. She's pretty active in the community. So she previously worked at the center in Utica and worked with refugee youth on holistic educational and language assistance, doing some social work with that. I was through a New York State grant, she said. And in this role, she actually worked a lot with BOCES in Utica to get them into either job training or GED classes. So she's familiar with BOCES from that position. She also advised, tutored, and taught at SUNY Morrisville in the C-STEP program, which is a program, it's a New York State Education Department grant that was designed to increase the number of first-generation or underrepresented populations who are pursuing professional careers in STEM. So she did a lot of work in that department. Yeah, as I said, tutoring, teaching, advising. She's been involved in Hamilton for a number of years on the Hamilton Village Recreation Committee. So she kind of, as I understand it, she spearheaded the ice rink, getting the ice rink in, and then getting the skate rentals at the library. She also helps out, or is on the committee to foster like the day camps or the activities during winter break, spring break, and the summer rec program. So she's involved heavily in that committee. She tutored privately during COVID and was a professional tutor, I said, at Morrisville State College. During the pandemic, she worked with New York State Public Health, covering 5 counties to do, like, as a social worker for, I guess during that time, in long-term care facilities. She's currently working at Colgate to facilitate research opportunities to students, and also she's taking classes for a master's degree. I'm not sure if she already has a master's. She went to Colgate also, possibly in education or in social work. She's taking an education class at the moment that she's really enjoying. And when I asked her about what most interested her about the position, she just said that she has a deep appreciation for what BOCES does for education by facilitating and fostering opportunities for students. So, and I think she's pretty familiar with that through her work in Utica at the center. So she had a few questions and said she'd be interested in talking to you or to find out a little bit more, some of the questions that I couldn't answer. But
Okay.
yeah, it seemed very interesting.
Tom?
My person is a different person. I spoke with Chris Hamann. She is also an ACS alumni and parent of an ACS alumni as well. She is the LGBTQIA outreach coordinator at Bridges, and she works with. She's worked with our school, but works with other schools in the county in that role. So she's pretty active in that regard. She is on the board of the Hamilton Community Chest. She's also on the board of the National Abolition Hall of Fame and Museum. Founding member of the Hamilton Area Anti-Racism Coalition. I understand that the Friends of the Farmers Market Committee is no longer active, but she was on that committee as well. And she's run some LGBTQIA trainings for ACS administration. She is also she helped out with the anti-bullying button-making campaign, and she's on the inclusivity committee as well for us. So pretty active here, not just with our school, but other schools in the region.
And Corey, you didn't have anybody that, yes, and Jen?
No.
I didn't think so, but I didn't want to skip over you, either of you. I spoke with a bunch of people, like I said, and Travis, who's here, so it's going to be a little weird to read in front of him, but here we go. Travis would welcome the opportunity to serve as a representative on Madison United BOCES board if chosen. He's always been passionate about BOCES, particularly Madison Oneida, as he went there as a student in Morrisville Eaton Central School. He was one of the first programs that they called for new ventures, which has obviously changed through the years, but was part of that program, and that not only helped him decide what to study post-graduation, but the connections he made turned out to be invaluable during the term, the impact throughout his career. He had experiences, similar experiences with MO BOCES, people who, we should just read this. I was trying to cut through the sentences, but 25 years later, I know many other people who've had similar experiences, people who wouldn't likely be so high up in the career paths if it weren't for the quality of education and mentoring that they received through their BOCES education and experiences that their school understandably could not offer to them at the local level. He's had lifelong advocacy for skills trades education. BOCES offers students and adults the opportunity to explore, grow their skills in some of the fields of studies. This being said, many people do not realize that BOCES offers programs that go beyond the trades, internship programs, law programs, and others. Fields of study the BOCES offer students and component districts is essential to allowing the districts to provide their students with diverse and equitable educational opportunities. Through these opportunities, students become better prepared in making their postgraduate decisions. Beyond the opportunities available for students at the BOCES campus, their satellite campuses, BOCES is able to help districts in many other important ways. This can include shared staffing with other schools, professional development opportunities, central offices, responsibilities, labor and legal assistance, bus maintenance, technology support, and so on. We would not be able to do some of the things we do without the support of BOCES. He's worked with some of the people in the BOCES, including Scott Budelman and his predecessor, Jackie Starks, and feels that he has the knowledge and skill set to be a great board representative for us there. So, well, I'm excited that we have a couple people to move on to the next step, I guess, if it sounded like we were all in agreement that that would be a good idea. So what I'll do is I'll ask Jody and I will get together and work with Scott's office to find a time that he's available and try to get at least one, if not two representatives from that board to join that meeting as well so that they can get to meet a couple of people other than me that they might be working with. So.
Quick question. At what point do we kind of clarify in what way that representative works with our board, if at all, in terms of submitting a report or just making sure that there's communication? I'm not sure. That was one of the questions that came up, so I don't know if that's something.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, we haven't actually ever had that. We've always had a representative on the board, but we've never really had the board report or anything like that.
So when Harry was,
yeah,
he was.
I think when Stephanie was, we used to get something. She would usually
From
do
time
like
to
a
time,
handout
yeah.
time to time or give a quick little.
Report all through that.
So yeah, I think
There
we
were
can.
times where Harry would
Yeah.
have a handout,
Yeah.
but he wouldn't do a report.
Not on a regular
Yeah.
basis. So yeah, we can definitely develop that as and the good thing is we have to nominate by the 15th, or the 14th is our meeting. And then the annual meeting, which is kind of like sealed as deal, on April 10th, and then they don't really start until July, so there's time to work out some of those details as well in that process. So thank you guys for reaching out to people, and we will work on the next steps of putting together a meeting for them in the next couple weeks, and I will get back to you and let you know if we still are at 3, if we need to meet before the next meeting, if we can just decide during the next meeting. We have to nominate at the March meeting. So if we need to have another meeting, we totally can, but we just have to do it before March 14th. Okay? So thank you. And thank you to the 3 that we just spoke about for allowing us to speak about them, public meeting, and for considering the position. The other dates are on the agenda. Again, I just mentioned the 15th for the deadline for this. The BOCES meeting on April 10th, which we should all have on our calendars if we can make it as really a good meeting event to go to. So April 10th is a date that we should mark on our calendars. And then there's budget information as well. We need to remind people that are watching, if anybody's watching, I think there are people watching, but, and those that listen after, that we do need petitions. There will be one board seat available, that is up this year. So if somebody would like to run, they need to put their name in. Petitions are available on March 1st. Just making sure I read that right. March 19th is how to become a school board member candidate, what you need to know, and if you're interested, please contact the district office. And then May 14th is the public budget hearing. Questions there? Okay. That's it for now. That's our meeting. We're
Community.
Yes, I know. But we're not going to vote when we come out of session, are we?
No.
We have nothing to vote on
We
after.
have another legislation.
Yeah, I know, but I like to ask that before that.
Yes, we will not be voting in exec session.
Hold on, you guys. She's making sure we're still awake.
There's no participation online, but at this time, if anybody would like to come to the podium, we invite you to do so. Thank you all for being here, for listening, and especially for the very important information regarding the budget and the time that put into that on all parties. I need a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss matters regarding the employment of particular individuals.
Come on.
Second.
All those in favor?
Hi.
We'll take a 5-minute break. Just because the bathroom's so far.
And I need to move a little bit. Thank you, Jody. I like